The harsh fluorescent lights of Xiphron Station flickered overhead as Lyra made her way through the crowded marketplace. Her walking stick tapped rhythmically against the metal floor, creating a pattern of sounds that helped her understand the space around her. Click, tap, click. Each echo told her a story: a wall to her left, an open corridor ahead, a cluster of vendors to her right. She was Valkyrie, a species famous across the galaxy for having 4 eyes and vision so sharp they could see the rings of distant planets with their naked eyes. Her people were artists, architects, and astronomers. They painted with colors that other species couldn't even perceive. But Lyra had never seen any of it. She had been born blind, a mistake of genetics that her people considered shameful. Today, she needed to buy nutrition packets from the market before her shift in the waste management sector. It was the only job anyone would give her. While other Valkyrie designed beautiful buildings or created stunning artwork, Lyra sorted garbage by touch and sound. She moved carefully between the stalls, her stick sweeping in front of her. The marketplace was always chaotic, voices shouting in dozens of languages, the hum of anti-gravity carts, the sizzle of cooking food from vendors she would never see. She had memorized the route, counting her steps carefully. 53 steps from the east entrance, then turn left at the spice vendor. She knew because the smell of Andromedan pepper always burned her nostrils at that exact spot. But today something was different. A merchant had moved his display cart 3 feet to the left. Lyra's stick missed it entirely. Her leg caught the corner of the floating cart, and suddenly there was a tremendous crash. Containers of bright Zephron crystals, expensive, delicate, and colorful, scattered across the floor in every direction. "You stupid blind creature," the merchant screamed. He was Valkyrie too, one of her own people. "Those crystals cost more than you'll earn in a year." Lyra dropped to her knees immediately, her hands frantically searching for the crystals. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know the cart was there. Please, I'll pay for them." A crowd had gathered. She could hear their footsteps forming a circle around her. Then came the laughter. It started with one person, then spread like a disease through the crowd. The sound pierced her more sharply than any crystal could. "Look at her, crawling on the ground like an animal," someone said. It was another Valkyrie voice, female. "How did she even survive to adulthood?" another voice added. "Natural selection should have taken care of that problem. My people would have left her on a mountain as an infant," said a rough voice she recognized as belonging to one of the Kraxan traders. "It's cruel to let defective ones suffer." Lyra's hands trembled as she continued gathering the crystals, cutting her fingers on their sharp edges. She could feel the warm blood mixing with the cold metal of the floor. Nobody helped her. Nobody even stopped laughing. "Pathetic," the merchant spat. "Keep your worthless credits. Just get out of my sight before you break something else." The irony of his words, "out of my sight," wasn't lost on Lyra. She gathered her stick and stood, her head lowered in shame. As she turned to leave, she bumped into someone. She braced herself for more insults. "Easy there," a male voice said gently. The accent was strange, the words shaped differently. Human, she realized. "Are you all right? Your hand is bleeding." Lyra pulled away instinctively. Kindness was a trap. It always was. "I'm fine," she whispered and hurried away as fast as she dared, her stick tapping frantically, counting her steps back to the safety of her small quarters where no one could see her cry. Behind her, Marcus Webb stood in the dispersing crowd, watching the blind alien girl disappear into the corridor. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. He had been in space for 3 years, had met dozens of alien species, but he had never seen anything quite as cruel as what he had just witnessed. Something in his chest ached, a feeling he couldn't quite name. He looked down at the small crystal that had rolled near his feet, picked it up, and made a decision that would change 2 lives forever. Marcus couldn't get the image of Lyra out of his mind. For 3 days, he found himself looking for her in the corridors of Xiphron Station. He told himself it was just curiosity, but deep down he knew it was something more. He had seen cruelty before, but watching an entire crowd laugh at someone's struggle had shaken something inside him. He finally found her in the waste management sector, wearing a gray uniform that was too large for her thin frame. She stood at a sorting station, her 4 eyes closed as her hands moved rapidly over different materials. Plastic to the left, metal to the right, organic waste to the center. She never hesitated, never made a mistake. Her fingers could identify materials in seconds, faster than the workers who could see. Marcus watched for a full minute before speaking. "You're really good at that." Lyra froze. She recognized the voice from the marketplace. The human who had asked if she was okay. "What do you want?" Her tone was defensive, guarded. Just making an observation, Marcus said, stepping closer but not too close. He had learned that Lyra used sound to map her surroundings, and sudden movements confused her mental picture. I'm Marcus. I'm an engineer. I work on the station's life support systems. I didn't ask for your life story, Lyra said, but her voice was softer now, curious despite herself. Fair enough, Marcus replied. He stood there in silence for a moment, watching her work. I noticed something. You make clicking sounds with your tongue when you walk. That's echolocation, right? Like the bats on Earth. Lyra's hands paused. Nobody had ever noticed that before, or if they had never mentioned it. Yes, she admitted. Sound bounces off objects. I can build a picture in my mind of what's around me. It's not perfect, but it helps. That's incredible, Marcus said, and he genuinely meant it. Your brain is processing acoustic data in real time and converting it into spatial awareness. That's more sophisticated than half the navigation systems I work with. For the first time in years, Lyra felt something strange, pride. Not shame, not pity, but actual respect in someone's voice. It's just survival, she said quietly. Over the next few weeks, Marcus kept coming back. At first, Lyra tried to push him away with short answers and cold responses. But Marcus was patient. He would sit on a supply crate during her breaks and talk about his work, about Earth, about the stars. He never asked invasive questions about her blindness. He never treated her like she was broken. One day, Lyra finally asked him something that had been bothering her. Why do you keep coming here? Don't you have friends? Other humans to talk to? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I do, he said honestly. But they don't see the station the way you do. You experience it differently. You notice sounds, textures, temperatures that I completely miss. It makes me think about things in new ways. I've never seen anything, Lyra said bitterly. Not a single thing in my entire life. Tell me what you wish you could see, Marcus said gently. The question unlocked something in Lyra. Words poured out of her like water from a broken dam. She told him about the Valkyrie legends of color, about the bioluminescent gardens on her home world that supposedly glowed in patterns that told stories. She told him about the grand halls of Valkyrie architecture, buildings designed to play with light in ways that created moving pictures on the walls. She told him about her mother's face, which she had only touched once as a child before her family abandoned her. My people communicate partially through color changes in their skin, Lyra explained, her voice breaking. I can never know what anyone is really saying. I miss half of every conversation. Marcus listened to every word, and when she finished, he made a decision. That night, he went to the station's medical library and searched for everything humanity had ever discovered about vision, neural interfaces, and sensory sharing. The files were extensive. Humans had developed bioneural bridges for deep space exploration teams, allowing them to share sensory data during dangerous missions. The technology was new, experimental, but functional. Marcus read through case studies, technical specifications, and medical reports until his eyes burned. At 3 a.m, he found what he was looking for. A theoretical paper about cross-species neural bridging. It was possible to create a permanent connection between two beings, allowing them to share sensory input. The research had been abandoned because the cost was too high. The donor would lose the sense they were sharing forever. Marcus stared at the screen for a long time. Then he started making private calls to neuroscientists back on Earth, asking questions he couldn't fully explain. He didn't tell Lyra. Not yet. First, he needed to know if it was really possible. For 6 weeks, Marcus worked in secret. He contacted 12 different specialists across human space, asking careful questions about neural bridges and sensory transplants. Most told him he was crazy. Too hung up on him. But 3 scientists were intrigued enough to run the calculations. The answer came back the same each time. Yes, it was possible. Yes, it would work between a human and a Valkyrie. And yes, it would be permanent. The neural bridge would split his visual processing between both their brains. He would lose his sight completely. Lyra would gain it fully. There was no middle ground, no way to share it equally. The technology simply didn't work that way. Marcus spent 3 nights staring at his ceiling, unable to sleep. He thought about everything he would never see again. Earth's oceans. The red storms of Jupiter. The face of his younger sister. Sunsets. His own reflection. The stars he had spent his whole life dreaming about. But then he thought about Lyra, navigating a world designed against her, mocked by her own people, denied the very thing her species valued most. He thought about her sitting in her quarters creating small sculptures from recycled materials, arranging them in patterns she could only feel, never see. Art that no one would ever appreciate because she couldn't display it properly. His friends noticed something was wrong. "You've been acting weird, Marcus," his colleague David said one day. "What's going on?" Marcus almost told him. Almost. But he knew what would happen. They would try to stop him. They would say he was being irrational, that he barely knew Lyra, that she wasn't even human. So he said nothing. The decision became clear one afternoon when he watched Lyra in the marketplace again. She had learned the new layout now, adjusted her mental map. But a group of young Valkyrie were deliberately moving things as she walked past, laughing as she stumbled and corrected her path. She never complained. She just kept going, her dignity somehow intact despite everything. That night, Marcus asked Lyra to meet him in one of the station's observation lounges. It was late, and the room was empty except for the two of them and a massive window showing the stars beyond. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Lyra tilted her head, her 4 eyes aimed in his direction but seeing nothing. "You sound nervous. What's wrong?" Marcus explained everything. The research, the neural bridge technology, the possibility of giving her sight. He spoke quickly, afraid that if he stopped, he wouldn't have the courage to continue. When he finished, the silence stretched between them like a physical thing. "No," Lyra said finally. Her voice was sharp, almost angry. "Absolutely not." Marcus hadn't expected that. "What? Why not? Are you insane?" Lyra stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "You would blind yourself for me? A person you've known for 2 months? That's not kindness, Marcus, that's madness." "It's my choice," Marcus said calmly. "It's a stupid choice." Lyra's voice cracked. "I've survived 24 years without sight. I'll survive the rest of my life too. I don't need your pity." "This isn't pity," Marcus said, standing to face her. "Lyra, listen to me. I've seen the galaxy. I've watched ice volcanoes on Europa. I've seen the birth of a star through a telescope. I've experienced visual wonders most humans never get to witness. I've had 28 years of sight. And you want to throw it all away?" Lyra was shaking now. "No," Marcus said softly. "I want to give it purpose. You're an artist, Lyra. I've seen your sculptures. You create beauty through touch alone. Imagine what you could do if you could see. Imagine the art you could make, the barriers you could break. My eyes have seen enough. But through your eyes they could see things I never could. They could create things that would change how people see the universe." Tears were streaming down Lyra's face now. "I can't let you do this. I can't be responsible for destroying your life." "You're not destroying it," Marcus said. He reached out and gently took her hand. "You're giving it meaning. In human culture we have a saying, the measure of a life isn't what you keep, it's what you give away. I've made my decision, Lyra. The only question is whether you'll accept it." Lyra pulled her hand away and turned toward the window she couldn't see. For a long time she said nothing. Marcus could hear her breathing, irregular and shaky. Finally she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "If I say yes, I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of this gift." "You already are," Marcus said. The medical facility was cold and sterile, filled with equipment from a dozen different species. Marcus lay on one surgical table while Lyra occupied another just 3 feet away. Both of them were awake, though sedatives made everything feel distant and dreamlike. Dr. Sarah Chin, the lead human neurosurgeon, stood between them with 2 Valkyrie medical specialists flanking her. "This is the last chance to change your minds," she said, looking directly at Marcus. "Once we begin, there's no reversing this procedure." Marcus turned his head slightly to where he knew Lyra was lying. "I'm ready." Lyra's voice was small but steady. "So am I." Dr. Chin nodded to her team. "Then let's begin." The neural interface device looked deceptively simple. A small metallic disc that would be implanted at the base of each of their skulls. Microscopic threads would extend from it, connecting to their optic nerves and visual cortex. The real complexity was in the programming, the careful mapping of Marcus's neural pathways that would be recreated in Lyra's brain. Marcus felt the anesthesia mask lower over his face. His last conscious thought was a hope that this would work, that Lyra would finally see what she had been missing. Then everything went black. The surgery took 14 hours. Dr. Chin and her team worked with microscopic precision, threading the neural connections one fiber at a time. The Valkyrie specialists monitored Lyra's unique brain structure, adjusting the interface to accommodate her 4-eyed visual system. It was the most delicate procedure any of them had ever attempted. When it was done, both patients were placed in medical comas. Their brains needed 48 hours to form the new pathways, to accept the foreign connections and make them permanent. During that time their vital signs were monitored every second. Station security posted guards outside the medical bay because news of the procedure had leaked, and crowds were gathering. Lyra woke first. The medical staff had dimmed the lights to almost nothing, knowing that her first experience with sight might be overwhelming. Dr. Chin stood beside her bed, her hand ready on the light controls. "Lyra? Can you hear me?" Dr. Chin asked softly. Lyra's 4 eyes opened slowly. For a moment nothing happened. Then her entire body went rigid. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Her eyes darted frantically around the room, taking in shapes, colors, light, shadow, concepts she had never experienced before. "Breathe, Lyra," Dr. Chin said gently. "Just breathe. What you're feeling is normal." I can. Lyra's voice broke. Tears streamed down her face. "Colors. There are colors. So many colors. The walls are they white? Is this white?" "Yes," Dr. Chin said, smiling. "That's white." Lyra lifted her hand in front of her face and stared at it like it was the most miraculous thing in the universe. "This is my hand. My hand. I always knew it by touch, but now I can see it." She turned her head and saw Dr. Chin for the first time. "You're beautiful. Humans are beautiful." 3 hours later, Marcus woke to complete darkness. He had known it was coming, had prepared himself mentally for this moment, but the reality was still shocking. He reached up to touch his eyes. They were still there, still functional. But they sent no signals to his brain anymore. Those pathways belonged to Lyra now. Did it work? His first words were exactly what he had planned to say. Dr. Chin squeezed his hand. "It worked perfectly, Marcus. She can see." Marcus smiled. The darkness around him felt different than he had imagined. Not empty but somehow full of possibility. "Can I talk to her?" They brought Lyra to his bedside in a wheelchair. She was still weak from the surgery, still processing the overwhelming flood of visual information. When she saw Marcus lying there, his eyes open but unseeing, she started crying again. "Marcus," she whispered. "I can see you. You have brown hair and blue eyes and a scar on your chin. You're crying too." Marcus hadn't realized he was crying until she said it. He reached out and found her hand. "Tell me everything. Describe everything you see." And she did. For the next hour, Lyra described the medical bay in exhaustive detail. The white walls, the silver equipment, the blinking lights on the monitors. She described the blue of the medical uniforms, the texture of the blankets, the way light reflected off metal surfaces. She described things Marcus had seen 1,000 times before, but through her words, through her wonder, they became new again. "There's a window," Lyra said suddenly. "I can see stars, Marcus. Real stars. They're not just points of light, they're different colors. Blue and red and white and yellow." Marcus squeezed her hand tighter. "Those are my favorite," he said softly. "Now they're yours too." The news spread through Zyphron Station like wildfire. A human had given his sight to a blind Valkyrie. Permanently. Willingly. Species that had been part of the galactic community for thousands of years struggled to understand it. Self-sacrifice on this scale was unheard of, especially across species lines. Within a week, reporters from dozens of worlds descended on the station. They wanted to interview Marcus, to understand why he had done something so extreme. But Marcus refused all interviews. "This isn't about me," he told them through the medical staff. "Let Lyra tell her own story." And Lyra did. She stood before cameras for the first time in her life, seeing the journalists, seeing their equipment, seeing everything. Her 4 eyes were bright and clear as she spoke. "My people abandoned me because I was born different. They treated me like I was worthless. But a human, someone who owed me nothing, gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given. He showed me what my own species never did. Compassion." The Valkyrie government officials who watched that broadcast felt something they rarely experienced: shame. Within days, representatives from the Valkyrie home world arrived at the station. They found Lyra in her quarters, which she had spent hours simply looking at, memorizing every detail. "We would like to apologize," the eldest representative said. "Our treatment of you was unacceptable. We would like to offer you a position in our cultural ministry, and full citizenship rights with honors." Lyra looked at them for a long moment. These were her people, the ones who had turned their backs on her for 24 years. "Where were you when I was sorting garbage?" she asked quietly. "Where were you when I was being mocked in the marketplace? It took a human to show you I had value. Keep your apology. I don't need it anymore." The representatives left in silence. The story made Lyra a symbol across the galaxy, but she didn't care about fame. She cared about the small art studio Marcus helped her set up in a larger apartment they now shared. Marcus adapted to blindness faster than anyone expected. Lyra taught him her echolocation techniques, and he learned to navigate the station with surprising skill. His engineering work continued using haptic interfaces and audio-based computer systems. He proved that losing sight didn't mean losing purpose. But the real transformation happened in Lyra's art. She began creating pieces that no one had ever seen before, sculptures meant to be both touched and viewed, paintings with textures that told one story to the fingers and another to the eyes. She created art that bridged the gap between her old world of darkness and her new world of light. Her first major exhibition was held 6 months after the surgery. The gallery was packed with beings from across the station. The centerpiece was a massive installation she called The Bridge. It was a sculpture made of transparent materials that caught light in beautiful ways, but every surface was also covered in textures that told a story in a language only touch could read. Marcus stood beside her at the opening, listening as she described each piece to him in detail. Watching her work, hearing her explain the interplay of light and shadow, he felt no regret. Not even a flicker. A young Valkyrie child approached them, a girl no older than 10 with the same genetic markers that had caused Lyra's blindness. Her parents stood nervously behind her. "Are you really blind now?" the child asked Marcus in a small voice. "I am," Marcus said with a smile. "Doesn't it make you sad?" Marcus knelt down to the child's level. "Sometimes," he said honestly. "But I gave my sight to someone who needed it more than me. And you know what? She's using it to make beautiful things that help people understand each other better. That makes me happier than seeing ever did." The child's parents approached Lyra after that, tears in their eyes. "We were told to institutionalize our daughter because of her condition," the mother said. "But after hearing your story we refused. She's perfect exactly as she is." Lyra looked at the little girl and saw herself. But this child would grow up in a different world, one that was slowly learning that different didn't mean worthless. "She is perfect," Lyra agreed, taking the child's hand. "And she's going to do amazing things." Years passed. The neural bridge technology that had connected Marcus and Lyra became the foundation for other medical breakthroughs. Dozens of species began developing accessibility technologies they had never considered before. The Valkyrie opened schools for disabled children. Other civilizations followed suit. But for Marcus and Lyra, life remained beautifully simple. Every evening they would sit by the observation window. Lyra would describe the stars, the passing ships, the colors of distant nebulas. Marcus would listen, his hand in hers, seeing everything through her words. "Do you ever miss it?" Lyra asked him one night. "Your sight." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "I don't miss it," he said, "because it's not gone. It's right here, seeing things more clearly than I ever could alone." And in the darkness behind his eyes, Marcus understood something profound. True vision had nothing to do with light or color. It was about perspective, about what you chose to see in the world and in each other. He had given Lyra his eyes, but she had given him something far more valuable. She had shown him what it meant to truly see another person's worth. The stars wheeled overhead, brilliant and eternal, witnessed by eyes that had been given freely and received with gratitude. And somewhere in the station's corridors, a blind girl who had once been mocked for hitting walls walked with her head held high, creating art that would inspire generations, carrying forward a human's vision of what compassion could achieve.